Aw, Half-Life 2 mods. They're almost comfort games for me. I played Half-Life 2 so many times that the engine just feels second nature, but I'm always going to want more Half-Life 2 style content, and that's where mods come in. Hey everybody! As always, Jarek here. Last month I covered the entire Fear franchise, and I majorly underestimated how much work every one of those videos would be. I just had a lot to say about the Fear games, and I came into it expecting, well, not a video that was going to require 5 days of constant editing non-stop. I really don't know what I was expecting. I have pretty strong opinions about all of those games, so that's on me. I figured I might as well make my life a little bit easier this week and cover a Half-Life 2 mod, as they tend to be a bit shorter and easier videos to make. So today I'm going to be covering a Half-Life 2 mod called Thunder's Leaves. I had been eyeing this mod for quite a while, it looked really good, and I really wanted to play it. But before I get into all of that, we need to thank today's sponsor. Have you ever daydreamed about being rich? Don't lie to me, we've all done it. You probably are just doing it earlier today. Well, unfortunately, you'll probably never be rich in real life, but you can carry that dream of being rich into today's sponsor, Adventure Capitalist. Adventure Capitalist has contacted me because they're celebrating their 6-year anniversary, which is rather unusual for a mobile game. They don't normally stick around that long. You might have played this game in the past, and if you have, it might be worth checking out to see all the new content they've added. The game is still free to play. Check that link down below in the video information. This game even has a documentary on YouTube. As it turns out, the developer was about to go under as a studio. One of the writers pitched the idea of this game, which no one else approved of, until he made a prototype, which everyone seemed to enjoy. And now here we are 6 years later with 50 million plus people downloading. This is the perfect kind of secondary style of game. What I mean by that is, say you're playing a game where you can only die once, well, after you die you can pick up this game and play while you wait. There are current rewards for this very campaign. All of these rewards are available for anyone who downloads in the next 6 weeks. These rewards are running back-to-back limited time events, a party hat giveaway, granting 6 free time warps for Time Warp Wednesday, a store sale, and changing in-app store bundle offers. Again, this game is free. If you want to try it for yourself, check the link down below in the video information. And as always, a huge thanks goes to Adventure Capitalist for sponsoring this video. Now, Thunder's Leaves is not a graphical powerhouse, but you shouldn't expect it to be. I mean, the Source Engine came out in 2004. When the Source Engine came out, I was 13 years old. I was born in 91. I'm 30 now, for people that didn't do the math in their head. People have done some truly amazing things with the Source Engine, but this mod didn't try to be too ambitious in that regard. That all said, it is a remarkably well-polished mod. It doesn't rewrite the engine by any means, but it definitely looks good for a Source mod. This could be a poster child for a standalone mod. You take the tools you have given to you, you make some new environments, you polish it up with some extra detail, and there you go. That is really underselling mods, but you get my point. It looks great, and the environments are new, so I really have no complaints. And hey, having a shootout in a skate park is just fun. I mean, Black Ops 2 already figured that out. Story-wise, things get a little more dicey. Now, you don't usually expect a mod to have an in-depth story, but this one does try to an extent. Voice acting in mods is usually, well...
What are you doing here? The cartographer is compromised by the parasite. They snuck in through the vents and broke our lines.
Thankfully, voice acting in this mod is not so bad. Now, it is a mod, and these are not professional voice actors, so some of the voice acting is hit or miss. But for the most part, you're not really going to be focusing on it that much. Now, it definitely can bring you out of the moment, especially when numerous voice actors right next to each other are using different quality microphones.
I checked. No chance.
What about Wilson?
Destroyed.
St. Joe?
No.
But for the most part, for a mod, the voice acting is more than passable. The actual story itself is pretty simple. At the beginning of this mod, it lets you know that the events are playing out after Episode 2. That said, nothing really connects it to Half-Life 2 or Episode 1 or Episode 2 aside from just the general setting, so I don't think this is very important. As long as you know the Combine are still in control, that's all that matters. You play as Vincent, a new soldier that just transferred in from the city. The colony you have just moved to has repurposed a bunch of Combine tech. Man-hacks are now drones that can hack things. Those flying security camera things now make plants grow. Things like that. Combine, however, have been sending out weird pulses that seem to be messing with your equipment. As it turns out, the Combine have found a way to use their own equipment against you and also shut down all of your electronics and means of communication. Who would have figured that using their tech might backfire against you? At this point, you now know the Combine have this tech, but you're cut off from everywhere else. So the mission now turns into going to the only radio tower left and warning other settlements, one of which being the big main city. It's a simple premise, but it works. The problem is they tried a bit too much with this, and it really gets in the way of actually playing the game. And my impressions at first were not exactly positive. The game seemed very polished, but the pacing seemed incredibly slow, nothing seemed to be getting done, my progression seemed just painfully boring. I continued to feel this way for the whole first half of this mod until it suddenly opened up and I started being able to enjoy myself. Now, this is an odd comparison, but if you play Pokemon, it was that same sort of feeling as Pokemon Sun and Moon had, where they just won't stop talking at you and it felt like you couldn't play the game. However, unlike Sun and Moon, it eventually lets you play the game. The difference here is that this is just a mod and not a full production game, so it doesn't have the quality to really keep you intrigued or be able to do that. Let me explain further. You spend a lot of this first half just walking behind NPCs and standing around listening to mod voice actors talk. I was very frequently saying, "Can I just shoot something, please?" To make things worse, the first half of the game, you're pretty much exclusively shooting zombies, and there seems to be way more zombies than there ever needs to be for every encounter, so you just seem to be progressing very slowly. This is occasionally split up by a puzzle that feels more tedious rather than fulfilling, or a defense section while you wait for a door to open. Yeah, that's not very compelling stuff, and while it's not painfully bad by any means, it's just kind of painfully boring. This is not to say they didn't try to throw in the occasional gimmick or something to catch you off guard. I'll talk about that in a bit. This mod is also not exactly very good at explaining new things they've introduced, despite the fact that there is a 30-minute long tutorial at the beginning of a mod that only lasts about 2 hours. Almost all of this tutorial is not necessary. I know how to play Half-Life 2. There's very few new mechanics that required me to learn something, and a lot of the times they didn't explain those very well either. For example, you can hack things in this game. Now, they explain it as an electro hack tool, and when you press the button, it makes a little shock sound effect. This shock sound effect sounds like it comes out from directly in front of you. You know, the same sort of sound effect that would come out when you're shooting a gun, for example. I did? It doesn't do anything? Do I just need to be standing in a very specific place for it to function? So naturally you would assume that you're holding a hack tool or something. If you're me, you're going to walk up to a box you need to hack, press that button, and nothing's going to happen, and then you're going to be confused. In all reality, what you're actually doing is using one of the repurposed man hacks and telling that man hack what that should hack. Even this isn't explained very well. I thought I hacked the man hack and made it my own, so then it would go hack boxes that it needed to hack. I didn't realize that I was saying, "You hack that thing over there." This seems like there's extra steps that just don't need to exist. It's also really important for you to know this stuff for later on in the game. The only thing this tutorial taught me that was actually genuinely useful is how the power armor works. Now, you're not playing as Gordon Freeman, so obviously you don't have an HEV suit, but you do have power armor. You get your armor and health back by shocking the shit out of yourself. I'm not kidding you. You walk up to an electric box, you hit it with a crowbar, and it starts charging your vest and heals you and hurts you at the same time. It's weird. That said, you can overcharge your vest and become a living Tesla coil, and it's actually kind of awesome. This did need to be explained in the tutorial because no one's ever going to willingly shock themselves that hurts you in any other situation. And to give the tutorial credit, they did explain this well, and I did understand how the mechanic worked. The last thing they explained in this tutorial was a new enemy type, showing you that you need to shoot its weak spots to kill it, which I could have just figured out on my own. Anyway, I've talked about the bad, now let's talk about the good, because the mod is, to me, pretty boring in the first half, but actually really fun in the second half. In the second half, the mod opens up. They give you a car that's full of electric hack drones in the back. At first, I was concerned because it was doing the cardinal sin that a mod does where they give you a vehicle then force you to stop every 5 feet anyway, but it's not long before you're really given the road and allowed to drive a while before you need to stop and then do a puzzle and fight some combine and then continue. It's actually really fun and satisfying. This is why I said it's important you need to know how hacking works, because whenever a gate is in the way or whatever, you need to get out of your car, get one of those drones out the back of your car, go inside, do a puzzle where you hack something to open that gate, and then continue. And usually when this happens, there's some scripted set pieces where you're battled in Combine. And this is actually paced incredibly well, which is odd because the first half of the game was paced really poorly. It seems like they really put most of their effort into the gameplay for the second half, and then most of their effort into the story for the first half, which I don't know why you would ever take that approach. Not to harp on this mod too much, but it's something I actually see really common with a lot of mods. They get overambitious with their story, and then they forget that there needs to be a game there, and then the whole mod suffers because of it. Anywho, let's talk about the gameplay and combat, because it's not just more Half-Life 2. I'll start with a complaint though. Why the hell did they put the pistols in the same slot as the crowbar? This is so annoying. If I press 1, I pull out the crowbar. If I press 1 again, I swap to the 9mm. If I press 1 again, I swap to the revolver. Why? I want to quickly swap to my crowbar so I can swat away a head crab. I don't want to suddenly pull out my revolver. This is not a big issue. You do get used to it. It's just, why? Anyway, the USP looks and sounds a bit different. The revolver basically functions the same, but still looks a little different. The MP7 has been modified and is pretty interesting. The rate of fire starts fast and then slows down over time. I assume this is to encourage you to burst fire. It also has a grenade launcher in the front of it. You do pick up the old MP7 from the Combine. At first, this confused me. I thought the mod messed up and they just forgot to remove some of the old MP7s, or it was left over. I didn't know what was going on. Eventually, I realized, no, this is just a two-faction thing. The Rebels have this upgraded MP7, a sort of makeshift rate of fire change, whereas the Combine have the traditional Half-Life 2 MP7 but without a grenade launcher on it. It's almost like the Elite Plasma Rifle compared to the Brute Plasma Rifle situation. The same thing can be said for the Pulse Rifle, although I'm a little confused on what the difference between the Combine Pulse Rifle and the Rebel Pulse Rifle is. The Rebel Pulse Rifle doesn't have the pulse shot, so it doesn't seem like an upgrade. It does look nice and have an interesting reload. It also has a sound effect for it that I know I've heard somewhere, but in my mind, I just cannot figure out what this gunfire sound is, and it's bothering me. Please tell me in the comments if you know. Anywho, the shotgun change is the most different. It's just a very weird looking UTS-15, except for it only holds 4 rounds and has this weird side box mag for it. Now the shotgun doesn't work like the Half-Life 2 shotgun where left click fires 1 barrel and right click does a double shot. The shotgun can only fire 1 shell at a time, but it's very powerful. That's when I realized that this shotgun is basically just the SPAS 12, but can only do double shot. I mean, fine, but like, why? I'm not really complaining, it's just baffling. The shotgun is still very fun to use though. It's a shotgun that does a lot of damage. Shotgun is so powerful. It's just the shotgun fairy deleted him. He's just gone. Whoops. Crossbow on the other hand works exactly the same, but you can still scope with it even though it now has no scope. Okay, there are 2 grenades in this game, and I'm still very confused of what the difference between the 2 are. I thought maybe one would be like a pulse grenade, but no, they both seem like frag grenades. I think the difference is purely cosmetic, and one is just a Rebel grenade, and the other is just a Combine grenade. And the rocket launcher is just a reskinned rocket launcher. It works the same as Half-Life 2. There is one extra cool gimmick while you're driving the car around in the countryside. See, while you're in the base, you have the option to choose what guns you want to use. This really confused me because I thought the game broke for a while. You walk into a room and there are 3 buttons. I assumed I was just going to push these buttons and then the cages would open in front of me and I get these guns. And then the NPC said something about choosing one. However, pushing these buttons didn't open any of them, so I thought that this broke the game. I was really confused. Eventually, much later in the mod, you get the ability to call in these pods that will deliver the guns that you chose to your position, which is really cool. It just wasn't explained very well. In practice though, this gives you a bit of replay value by giving you more ammo with the guns you would prefer to use, but ammo never really seemed to be too much of a problem, so I just chose the shotgun and crossbow, and I'm glad I did because you can't really find crossbow ammo around. Alright, let's talk about the new enemies, which is probably the most interesting thing about this mod. Let's start basic. The Combine have a few extra tiers. This basically just means more armored Combine, where 1 crossbow bolt won't be enough to kill them. They're not super bullet spongy and they're fun to fight, so I think this actually adds to the mod. But the real new Combine is this Combine unit that hides itself in a shield, and it will do a ton of damage to you and throw you around if it gets close to you. In order to kill this Combine, you need to shoot the floating things surrounding the shield. As I said, they explained this to you in the tutorial, which I didn't really need that. I could have figured it out on my own. It's pretty obvious. As you're shooting these weak spots flying around, more pieces fall off of them, so you're clearly doing damage. I wouldn't harp on the tutorial so much if it wasn't mandatory and part of the campaign. If it was an optional tutorial, then it wouldn't have mattered. Anyway, these new enemies are pretty fun to fight. They're presented to you in combat arenas that are not too small and claustrophobic, so you can actually strafe around them. Antlion's got a new enemy. This is just a stronger antlion that has sort of an area of effect when it dies that will hurt you. These things only showed up when when you're driving a car around, and there was no reason for them to exist. They were just a pest and a nuisance. They added nothing to the game. I'm not complaining about the enemy type, that's interesting, but why do we need to constantly have antlions spawning when we're trying to do a puzzle? Just stop. And then we get to the zombies, which have the most new enemies. The first one is a new zombie that is also wearing that power armor. The thing is, this power armor is fully charged, so if you get near that zombie, it's going to shock the hell out of you. Since this shock is also overcharged, it is too much for your vest to handle and will do damage. They're also a little bit more tanky since they're wearing this armor, but I found 2 crossbow bolts is enough to get rid of them. Again, an interesting new enemy. I do like them. A new enemy that I am mixed on, though, are the black head crabs, but now they have a device on them. When you kill these head crabs, they effectively just do a ton of damage in every direction around them. You will probably learn this the hard way. I heard angry head crab. What the heck is that? Ow. Okay, so it's an explosive. Today we learned. Now, in theory, this enemy is actually great because the black head crabs move really slowly and you have plenty of time to react to them. This forces you to do something other than just killing head crabs with a crowbar, which is almost what you were always going to do. The problem here are more the designs of the maps. For example, turning the corner to one of these in event, you're basically just stop! This encounter is 100% trial and error. There is no way to avoid dying or taking a ton of damage without knowing it's already there. And if you don't have grenades, I imagine this is going to be hell. So yeah, good enemy type, but odd enemy placement. There are definitely some more enemies. I'm forgetting some off the top of my head, but I don't want to explain all of them anyway. I would rather have you play the mod and see them for yourself. I know I explained how this works in the tutorial and already showed it, but again, fully charging your armor and turning yourself into a living Tesla coil is a lot of fun. The mod also uses it pretty sparingly, so it's not going to get boring. So let's get to the final conclusion of this mod. It is remarkably well polished, the voice acting isn't terrible, the graphics are good for a source mod, but the pacing in the first half is pretty bad, and honestly the whole first half of the game is pretty boring. The second half, however, is great fun. If they could have had that for the whole mod, this would have been one of the best mods I'd ever played. Would I recommend it? Yeah, I definitely would. If you like source mods, you are still going to enjoy this mod. I complained about it a lot because I'm pretty mixed. It's almost like there's 2 different games you're playing depending on the first half or the second half. But still, all of that said, they obviously put a lot of time, love, and care into this mod. If you enjoy source mods, you really should play Thunder's Leaves. I also want to mention that there's apparently 2 different endings. I only saw one, and everything else I've seen online only has one. I've never seen anyone get the alternate ending. I don't know what it is. But the mod does say right at the beginning that if you get all of the electrical boxes, if you hit all of them with your crowbar, there is another ending. I guess we'll just wait until someone finds it. So that should be it. That is Thunder's Leaves. A big thanks to everyone that joined me on Twitch while I streamed it. My Twitch is twitch.tv/JarekTheGamingDragon. If you subscribe on Twitch, you get to see my videos ahead of time. Also, a big thanks to today's sponsor, Adventure Capitalist. Check that link down below in the video information if you want to try it out. And of course, thank all of you guys for watching this video.